Good evening. What's today's date?
May 25th.
Welcome to the May 25th, 2021 meeting of Pequannock Township Council. Ms. Marsh.
In accordance with the requirements of New Jersey's Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this meeting was included in the annual meeting notice, which was filed in the office of the Township Clerk, posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, published as a legal notice in the Suburban Trends newspaper, and distributed to all persons requesting notice in accordance with Township policy.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a prayer and a moment of thanks for individuals serving our nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Most gracious Providence, we ask that you bless this governing body with an abundance of wisdom and understanding so that every deliberation will result in actions which will promote the common good and the general welfare for all the people of Pequannock Township. Amen.
Amen. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mrs. Florence Lynch?
Here.
Mr. Hurd?
Here.
Mr. Cole?
Here.
Mr. Phelan is absent. Mayor Russell?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, we have a couple of presentations.
Just going to come down.
Yep, so come on down. Will the American Legion honorees please come to the front?
I forgot.
Put it in the wrong one? All right, you did it perfectly. Just in case.
Will our honorees please step forward?
Yeah, the American Legion too, yes.
Yeah. Up here?
We'll start with Jill Hunt. Whereas Jill Hunt, RN, a Pequannock Township resident, has always been one step up and helped those in need. And whereas Jill's dedication to helping others is evidenced by many ways in which she interacts with her coworkers and cares for her patients. And whereas Jill, employed at Chilton Hospital, is a registered nurse, was redeployed from her normal nursing activities at the hospital to help patients requiring critical care during the COVID-19 pandemic, ensuring that the delivery of personal and quality care was provided to all patients assigned to her in a wide variety of settings. And whereas when Jill's unit at the hospital was closed to allow for additional service areas to address the COVID-19 pandemic, she mobilized her skills and shifted her efforts to those requiring critical care during this emergency. And whereas the American Legion's Citizen of the Year Committee has chosen to honor Jill Hunt, who made the hospital patients' well-being her primary goal, working tirelessly throughout the COVID-19 pandemic so that they were able to return to their loved ones as soon as possible. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Township Council of the Township of Pequannock is pleased to honor Jill Hunt, who exemplifies the meaning of personalized care, dedication, and community spirit as a member of Pequannock Township's Local Healthcare Heroes of 2021. Jane Lynch. Whereas Jane Lynch, RN, Pequannock Township resident, has always been one step up and helped those in need. And whereas Jane's dedication to helping others is evidenced by many ways in which she interacts with her coworkers and cares for her patients. And whereas Jane, employed at Chilton Hospital as a highly experienced registered nurse, needed to transition from her normal nursing activities at the shifted her efforts and worked tirelessly to meet the demands of those new patients who needed intense treatment. And whereas Jane also worked on the creation of a COVID-19 testing unit and a pre-admission unit where she remained positive during a very challenging time, generated a strong can-do attitude that permeated throughout the unit and ensured that the delivery of personal and quality care was provided to all the patients assigned to the new units. And whereas the American Legion Citizen of the Year Committee has chosen to honor Jane Lynch, who made hospital patients' well-being her primary goal, working tirelessly throughout the COVID-19 pandemic so that they were able to return to their loved ones as soon as possible. Now therefore be it resolved that the Township Council of the Township of Pequannock is pleased to honor Jane Lynch, who exemplifies the meaning of personalized care, dedication, and community spirit as a member of Pequannock Township's Local Healthcare Heroes of 2020. Michelle Pomeroy. It's okay. Whereas Michelle Pomeroy, our registered nurse, and Ernest Pomeroy, RPT, both Pequannock Township residents, have always stepped up and helped those in need. And whereas Michelle and Ernest's dedication to helping others is evidenced by the many ways in which they interact with their coworkers and care for their patients. And whereas Michelle and Ernest are members of Chilton Hospital's COVID-19 treatment team, providing impacted patients with therapeutically beneficial treatments, who spent endless hours with highly acute patients who were affected with the COVID-19 diagnosis and managed the critical care needed by their patients. And whereas Michelle and Ernest have donated their time to educate community members on the clinical treatment needed by affected patients. And whereas the American Legion Citizen of the Year Committee has chosen to honor Michelle Pomeroy and Ernest Pomeroy, who made hospital patients' well-being their primary goal, working tirelessly throughout the COVID-19 pandemic so that they were able to return to their loved ones as soon as possible. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Township Council of the Township of Pequannock is pleased to honor Michelle Pomeroy and Ernest Pomeroy, who exemplify the meaning of personalized care, dedication, and community spirit as members of Pequannock Township's Local Healthcare Heroes 2022. Whereas Denise Quackenbush, a Pequannock Township resident, has always been one step up and helped those in need. And whereas Denise's dedication to helping others is evidenced by the many ways in which she interacts with her coworkers and efficiently multitasks. And whereas Denise, employed at Chilton Hospital as a patient liaison and administrative coordinator, showcased support at the hospital on a 24-hour basis, which ensures the communications between patients, doctors, nurses, and staff members are functional and uninterrupted, and catalogs all the resources that are distributed to the hospital departments. And whereas during the pandemic, Denise manned the hospital entry doors, worked with community service and the foundation office to direct all the food and gifts to the staff at the hospital, worked with families and patients on visitation and patient-family calls, and kept staff and providers informed of any safety issues. Whereas the American Legion Citizen of the Year Committee has chosen to honor Denise Quackenbush, who made hospital patients' well-being her primary goal, working tirelessly throughout the COVID-19 pandemic so that they were able to return to their loved ones as soon as possible. Now therefore be it resolved that the Township Council of the Township of Pequannock is pleased to honor Denise Quackenbush, who exemplifies the meaning of personalized care, management, and community spirit as a member of Pequannock Township's Local Healthcare Heroes of 2020. Dr. Catherine Stevens. She's like, oh, why? Whereas Dr. Catherine Stevens, APN, RN, DMP, a treating physician at Chilton Hospital and Pequannock Township resident, has always been one step up and helped those in need. And whereas Dr. Catherine Stevens' dedication to helping others is evidenced by the many ways in which she serves the community. And whereas Dr. Catherine Stevens has educated and served as a care practitioner with the healthcare staff and critical care teams at the hospital, so they understand COVID-19 treatments, interventions, and are fully prepared to provide the highest quality treatment of the hospital's patients. And whereas Dr. Catherine Stevens continues to serve as a practitioner treating patients and conducting educational seminars at the hospital and throughout the community to provide proper clinical treatments needed by COVID-19 affected patients. And whereas the American Legion Citizen of the Year Committee has chosen to honor Dr. Catherine Stevens, who made hospital patients' well-being her primary goal, working tirelessly throughout the COVID-19 pandemic so that they were able to return to their loved ones as soon as possible. Now therefore be it resolved that the Township Council of the Township of Pequannock is pleased to honor Dr. Catherine Stevens, who exemplifies the meaning of personalized care, dedication, and community spirit as a member of Pequannock Township's Local Healthcare Heroes of 2020. But not least. What happens when you marry a W? You are a C. To step up and help those in need. And whereas Nancy's dedication to helping others is evidenced by the many ways in which she interacts with her coworkers and cares for her patients. And whereas Nancy, employed at Chilton Hospital as a registered nurse, was redeployed from her normal nursing activities at the hospital as her unit was closed and converted to an intensive care unit during the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas Nancy mobilized her skills and shifted her efforts to teaching the nurses and support teams the proper procedures for critical care patients during the transformation, remaining positive during a very challenging time with a strong can-do attitude that permeated throughout the unit and ensured that the delivery of personal and quality care was provided to all the patients assigned to the new unit. And whereas the American Legion Citizen of the Year Committee has chosen to honor Nancy, who made hospital patients' well-being her primary goal, working tirelessly throughout the COVID-19 pandemic so they were able to return to their loved ones as soon as possible. Now therefore be it resolved that the Township Council of the Township of Pequannock is pleased to honor Nancy Wassett, who exemplifies the meaning of personalized care, dedication, and community spirit as a member of Pequannock Township's Local Healthcare Heroes of 2000. For staying home, you guys didn't think twice, and I'm sure everybody is.
I just want to say thank you for all your hard work and dedication, and you guys, we honor you, and just, we love you.
I just want to say, we want to thank this community, which is amazing. Amazing. Your support and love, we couldn't have done it without you. Seriously. It was amazing.
Do you want to take pictures with your families? What's that? You want to take pictures with your families? Sure. Dave, do you have anything to add? Dave?
Just, it was all first responders, healthcare heroes, anybody that went to work during the COVID, height of the COVID work. We truly appreciate everything that everyone did. We congratulate you all on your award tonight, and I was at the hospital for 2 nights and 3 days. I didn't like it, but not because of you. I'm not a good patient.
Okay, her pictures.
Lastly, listen, I just want to say that this is just one of the small reasons why I love Pequannock so much. Last year was a little chaotic and different, but this just goes to show you, people from our own town stepping up. I know that you work at Chilton. I know that sometimes it's just a job. But last year was so much more than just a job. Not only were you protecting yourselves, but you're also protecting the people of Pequannock. Whether it's all my wonderful friends here, or whether it's any of our first responders, or police, or ambulance, fire company 1, fire company 2, all of these people are the people that put their lives on the line for any of us that got sick. So with that said, thank you very much.
The Legion will come on. Take some pictures.
I do agree.
Hold the
I fight with a tree and I lost him.
Watch out, Jim, you can get run down. Beautiful. There you go.
Squeeze in, everybody.
Memorial Day Parade, if the recipients like to walk, you're welcome to do it. We put that right in front of you. We'll have the Girl Scouts probably carry it for you. But you're welcome to walk in the parade. If you don't want to walk, we have vehicles for you. So let us know. Okay? Meet us down post 450 at 9:15 Monday. We'll give you rides or whatever you want to do. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. You're
See you, Bundy? All right. It starts, we pull off at 10. We ask everybody to be there like 9:30, 9:45. If we could.
I'll make a phone call tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I only came down because I wanted to see if there was any more crap going on. We're trying to honor everybody, and it's almost impossible. I'm good, you?
What do we wait for?
society. And whereas celebrating Pride Month raises awareness and provides support and advocacy for the LGBTQ+ community, and is an opportunity to become educated, engage in dialogue, strengthen alliances, and build understanding. And whereas while there has been remarkable progress towards acceptance and equality, members of the LGBTQ+ community continue to face discrimination and intolerance. And whereas we must commit to supporting and accepting LGBTQ+ individuals, in particular our youth, who compared to their peers are far more likely to experience violence and bullying at school. And whereas we affirm our support for LGBTQ+ residents in our community and stand with them to protect their civil rights and their ability to live openly, equally, and without fear. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Council of Pequannock Township on this 25th day of May 2021 that the Council recognizes and supports the month of June as Pride Month. We urge all residents to celebrate and build a culture of inclusiveness and acceptance during this month and every month as a welcoming sign to all. At this time, are there reports or comments from any volunteers serving our community? The next item on the agenda is public comments. This public comment period will be limited to a total of 30 minutes. An additional period for public comment is reserved later in the meeting. Individuals are requested to limit their questions and comments to 3 minutes. If anyone wishes to address the council, please wait to be recognized and come to the microphone and provide your name and address for the record.
There's a hand over there.
Where? Oh.
Didn't see you behind the post.
I couldn't see you, Anne-Marie. I just saw some hair. That's me.
Hi, Anne-Marie Finnan, 166 Boulevard. What great recognition tonight. I was just very proud sitting there. What a fantastic choice for Citizen of the Year. So glad that I got to see that recognition. So thank you to the Mayor and Council, I guess to the American Legion for making that just perfect selection. And then I also wanted to thank you for the resolution regarding Pride Month. I love this town so much. I'm always proud to be an educator in this town, to be a citizen of this town, but I'm just a little more proud today because that was not something that had to happen. You didn't have to take that step, and personally, I appreciate it, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. Kathy Scorbalis, 16 Prospect Ave in Pompton Plains. I'm so glad that I got to be here this evening because to see these stellar healthcare workers from Chilton represented is just, Chilton at its finest. So I was really happy to be able to see that. The reason, though, that I'm here is, parking situation with Tavern 5. I want to thank you all, first of all, for all your years of service, to Pequannock and the residents. It truly is appreciated, all the time that you put in. I've lived on Prospect Ave for 29 years and over 50 years in town. Dave, I sit on the Chilton board with you, so this was so nice to be able to see these people honored in the way that they were. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. I appreciate your intelligence and your perspective that you bring to the conversation. Melissa, I know that you've had a very successful career in town that has to do with homes and neighborhoods. I'm appealing to the town and council to intercede with the parking dilemma from Tavern 5. This is not just a pandemic thing. It started soon after they first opened, but has only gotten worse over the years. The town has an ordinance that requires adequate off-street parking. Residential streets should not have to deal with commercial parking up to 5 nights a week. There could be up to 100 cars parked on the surrounding streets from Tavern 5, in addition to their full parking lot. The tent that's up only takes up so many spots. I understand that outdoor dining has been extended because of the pandemic, but that was meant to let them reach their original capacity, not that they should be increasing the overall number of seats. The parking issue has become a nightmare, with diners coming and going, parking on manicured lawns or too far off, and becoming an impedance for emergency vehicles to get through. Disturbing peaceful neighborhoods, having people speed down the street after dinner and drinks, causing hazardous conditions for walking, biking, or trying to pull out onto the turnpike. And it prevents us from having our own family and friends over. Can you imagine if you had to deal with this on your street? I'm happy to have a beautiful restaurant nearby, but not at the expense of our losing our residential streets. It's starting to look like Hudson County with all the cars. One business should not negatively impact over 50 households. I have a petition with 70 names representing over 50 houses that are impacted by this. I implore the council and the town to help us get our streets back to what they should be, and that Tavern 5 have adequate off-street parking. And I have the petition here, if somebody would like it.
You can give it to Carol.
Sure. Thank you.
So what is this seating?
Oh, Mayor, I have one question. If she could just come up real quick again. Hi. Just have one question for you. On Prospect, how close are you to Turnpike?
My house is the 5th house from the turnpike.
So about a third of the way
Yes.
over? Are the cars parked all the way up and past your house? Or?
Yes.
Really? About how far do the cars,
Probably the house after mine.
so
And
not
they're
only
parked
down
on both-
Turnpike,
Oh, the turnpike? I don't know.
right,
if
I
you've
always see
driven.
that,
Yeah.
but also about,
And they're parking on Woodland, they're parking on Lockwood
Right.
and Dale, they're parking on Winfield.
okay.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, we are impacted the most because we're the closest street,
Right, right.
but
Is
none
it-
of us should be impacted.
Are there days that it's more than others, like a typical Thursday, Friday, Saturday kind of
Yep,
thing?
it could be up to 5 nights a week, but there typically are 3 nights, and with the weather, and now that everything is going to full capacity, and they don't have to be sitting at a bar.
Right.
I do think we need figure out some kind of solution. I went just a couple of days ago, and I didn't go there. I tried to drive through.
Yeah, it's packed.
And it was dangerous.
So, and there
was
have been
all of it.
accidents, police have been called numerous times, walking around talking to residents. We spoke to 5 or 6 households that called the police in the past week for different issues.
And about what time do the cars finally clear out?
They start at 11 a.m. if I may. They're starting with lunch now, too, as well.
I'll need you to come up to the mic and state your name and all that stuff. But they're starting at about 11 and going till about, what time?
Midnight.
Midnight.
If they're drunk, the cars stay there all night.
Okay. Thank
You
you.
know, I mean, you guys have an ordinances for reasons, right?
Right.
And it's really for the benefit of the town and the residents. And if we have, I don't really know how many seats they have in there or how many parking, but you do have a zoning ordinance that says that they should have 1 parking spot for every 3 seats. You know, 1 spot for every employee at maximum shift. Clearly, that's not the case when you have 100 cars on the surrounding streets. There's something wrong with that.
Would you like to speak about?
Yeah, no, I've spoken to Ms. Scriballa about it, and, you know, the the township is obviously sympathetic to the challenge. The issue is what to do about it. Before we got to the COVID dynamic, their site plan was approved in 2001 when Gillies was the restaurant, and the site plan called for 144 seats and had the required 51 parking spaces. So prior to any action with respect to outside dining, the ordinances that are in effect, that are enforceable from a zoning perspective, assuming they have the appropriate number of tables, it's compliant. So the challenge from a municipal perspective is we can't undo something that was approved. With respect to the expansion due to COVID-19 and the conversations that were held as a result of complaints was reviewed by myself, the township attorney, the zoning officer, the engineer. In response to some of the complaints, I personally went down and did a count of outside tables on April 13th, and the number of outside seats corresponded with the 50% restriction that was the inside, so there was an element of parity there. The health department, as a result of a number of complaints, conducted a number of inspections, most recently on May 1st. Again, counts were made, inspections for proximity because of COVID-19 requirements were checked, and at that time, again, no violations were discovered. So the problem is the way land use works when the approval is made. If the number of tables is compliant with the number of spaces, it is approved. If they add tables, the township can enforce that. But unfortunately, and this is just a thought and a theory, in the past, maybe if 4 people were going to dinner, they took 1 car. Now, with certain dynamics being different, they're taking multiple cars. So the township is in a position where the complaints have all been taken very seriously. The investigations have been undertaken. There have been conversations with everybody with enforcement power, and obviously in the last 2 weeks with the executive orders, with your professional role, you know things have evolved quickly in the last couple of weeks. So it needs to be re-examined with the restrictions being lifted. But with respect to normal operations, if the number of seats complies with the number of spaces, there isn't an element of enforcement from a zoning perspective that the township can take. So we're exploring any potential solutions. We're welcome to any suggestions, but unfortunately, we as a government are also limited in terms of what we're able to do, and we can't undo something that was previously.
Well, I know when they opened, the outdoor dining was there before the pandemic.
Yes, and
The
that was
picnic
consistent
tables
with...
were there before the pandemic. So this is not just a pandemic thing.
Right, and that was consistent with what was approved and the additional spaces that were conditioned by the planning board that had to be secured with the neighboring property owner. So once again, there's compliance there. So I fully appreciate and fully understand the experience of the neighbors, and I can completely see how frustrating it is to have a line of cars or a row of cars and deal with people coming and going for what has turned out to be an incredibly successful restaurant. The challenge from a municipal perspective is we need the basis for enforcement. If there's an exceedance of tables, and again, we need to work through the resolutions and the approvals that were provided in response to the pandemic, but prior to that, inspections were undertaken. If there were too many tables, notices of violation were written, those tables were then removed, and compliance was achieved. But that compliance does not mean the experience of the neighbors is necessarily assuaged, and that's where the frustration
Well, it seems like, if there's 100 cars on the street, if there's 51 spots in the lot and they're filled, and if they're using parking now at the Legion and behind Campbell's, it just doesn't add up as far as math goes that there's only 144 seats.
How many extra seats do they have with the outdoor that they added?
As of today, I don't know. As of the 13th, when I personally went and counted them, it was 68 or 66 additional.
But this is not just, this is really, has been an issue.
Because now they can do full indoor.
Right.
Right, and that's where, as the council is aware, there was a resolution that was adopted in 2020 as well as 21 because of the restrictions that were in place.
Would you be able to recognize somebody else that would like to come up to speak?
Yeah, I just would like to finish my sentence if that's...
Oh, sorry.
Okay. With respect to the pandemic, there were resolutions that were adopted, and it was extended in 2021. Now, as we know, Executive Order 242 was issued that removes those effective this Friday, so it's something that has to be explored with respect to how to approach the additional outdoor dining that's allowed if we no longer have the restriction of the indoor dining. But again, the challenge, as I stated before, it existed prior to all of this, and just because there are 100 cars doesn't mean they're out of compliance with the ordinance when the site was approved. And that's where the challenge from the municipality's perspective comes into play. And again, I'm not saying we're ignoring the issue, I'm not saying we're resting on our laurels. It continues to be discussed and explored to try to find a solution. It just becomes a challenge to do so.
And I think there are some creative solutions.
The original numbers.
If the council sees fit, I don't know, again, how many tables there are today, I wasn't there today, but if the council sees fit to amend the resolution to limit it to what was originally approved in the site plans, the original one approved in 2001 and then the revision in 2018, that would give a specific number to count against, and if there is a violation of that, then that would be something that would be easily enforced.
I do think we need to look at some resolution. Even though they're in compliance, we got to start thinking outside the box and seeing if there's a solution. I don't know what that is, but from a safety issue, I realize they're in compliance, but it's a safety issue, and we need to.
There is a church parking lot. There's the Chase Bank parking lot after hours that becomes a public parking lot.
Correct, and after one of the complaints, I know the zoning officer reached out to the owners of Tavern 5. They discussed the fact that the Chase Bank, if anyone's not aware, when Chase Bank received its land use approval after working hours, that becomes a public parking lot, so you're welcome to park there if you'd like to. The staff was encouraged to park there to alleviate the strain on the parking that's in close proximity. So again, it's not that it's something that's being discarded, it's just challenging to find a solution.
And you know, certainly patrons don't know to go back down to the corner to park there. They're going to park at the closest location.
Yep.
So I'm going to sit down and let other people talk.
Point of clarification. So when we passed the resolution to allow outdoor dining, it was for the pandemic, but we didn't pass the resolution for the intent of adding more tables, meaning going over that 144 seating capacity.
No, it was.
So even though, like, we're finally at the point where things are opening up and they're allowed, or they will be allowed to have 100% occupancy inside, that doesn't mean we never intended to expand the amount of seating.
Based on my recollection and the conversations that took place at the time, it was the intention to provide an opportunity for people to have patrons when they would not because of restrictions.
Stay in business.
An unintended consequence was really understanding the numbers, right? Because it was a response to an issue. For anyone that's been before a land use board, it's a highly technical process. There's a lot of review that takes place. There's a lot of things that have to be vetted before it's ultimately heard and voted on. And the resolution was really out of response to, we had an industry that was significantly impacted by the restrictions, and the council's perspective was to try to create an opportunity for people to have income during what was otherwise a very, very dry time. So I think this was an unintended consequence that, with the council's indulgence, we can explore and come up with perhaps a revised resolution. And, the mayor's comment was to cap it potentially at the number of seats that were approved in the regular site.
Right, we basically gave them leeway to keep operating, but never to add more than that, in that case, 144 seats. Well, so that's where they would be out of compliance, though, right?
Because the challenge in that is we did allow them to add more than the 144 seats, because if you have 50% capacity, just using simple round numbers, that gives you 72 seats. So you're allowed to then add seats outside that you could fill. So we did allow additional seating, but it was seating that could be filled at
but
just to make sure all that it's technical.
Right, but never to have more occupancy than what they were approved.
I don't think it was ever intended to create greater occupancy and greater burden on municipal streets, resources, etc.
But it could be that now, and correct me if I'm wrong, now they have the seats inside and the seats outside.
As of the 28th, the restrictions are all gone. So now we have a different animal.
Seats, which is causing the extra cars.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Carrie Donovan. I live at 9 Dale. I want to just first acknowledge, Ms. Lynch, that you sort of talked about this need to find the solution, right? For me, it's not about a line of cars coming and going, as you said, which feels a little dismissive in my opinion. It's about safety.
Yeah.
This is a danger. I've seen families and kids nearly get hit by cars. People slam on their brakes. People are pulling U-turns in the middle of the turnpike. It's dangerous. So if you're saying it's on us to come up with a solution, we can give as many solutions as we feel are fit, but it really feels like we can talk in circles about this all day, and it feels a little dismissive that you are. I can't even walk with my family. We can't back out of our driveways on Prospect. It's not a street that's built for street parking, and it becomes a one lane when people are on both sides. It's just dangerous. It's dangerous.
And I apologize if you took any of my comments as dismissive. They certainly weren't intended as such. As I said at the outset, the engineer, the attorney, the zoning officer, and I, we've had a lot of conversations about this. There have been inspections, there have been follow-ups, there have continued to be conversations, so it's absolutely not being dismissed. It's exactly the opposite. The challenge is, as frustrating and a regular complaint that comes to this body is speeding, right? And as challenging as regulation of speeding is, it's an enforcement issue for the police department. We can legislate all day long, but creating people to act in compliance is not necessarily something that this governing body can wave a magic wand and create to happen. So that's where the staff is really talking about it, to try to figure out what to do. But with everything that is in place, it is not a simple answer. And that's my only point. So please, if you took it as dismissive, I didn't mean it as such.
Yeah.
We are working on it.
I'm just wondering if, as a community, if there could be collaboration somehow with the businesses and start educating and encouraging people to take less cars or find a place that will allow us to park somewhere else, whether it be the bank or whether it be, I think that place, correct me if I'm wrong, that other building, I don't know if they use all that parking, but that was for sale. I mean, was there something like, is there more?
Which building?
There's the American Legion, and then there's the auto.
No, I'm talking about on the other side.
I think they did get permission to use other parts.
As a component of the 2018 site plan. And again, what can we ask, what can we compel, we're talking about.
We just really need to start looking.
And I think they have tried. I mean, I remember one of them came up to you and I one time and said, how do I get people from stop parking in between is out and in? So it's not like they don't care. They have a business that they're trying to run too. And I understand your concerns, but we have to somehow meet in the middle.
Could we change parking laws?
Not retroactively.
I mean, how do we go about changing that?
Well, we can change land use laws, right? They will apply prospectively. They will not apply to that property because that property already has a
street parking.
What about, we can also prohibit street parking, but then we have to prohibit it for everyone.
Right.
Under all circumstances.
What about one side of the street parking?
You can do one side of the street parking.
But then so just to go back one.
Yeah.
We can do street parking. Let's say we say no parking on side streets between X and X.
Right.
But that means no parking. No parking for patrons of the restaurant or if their family comes over. Right. If we do one side of parking, at least that gives a little more leeway, but that still applies to everybody.
It still applies to everybody. It does give more leeway. The concern is you just always move the problem just a little bit.
Right, you're going to move the problem further up Prospect or further up Dale.
So that's a concern. But that may be something to look at, to provide at least some safety relief if it's only on one side of the street.
Right. Okay.
Okay, hi, may I speak?
You know what, if everybody could sit down and when you want to speak, we'll raise your hand, and then when you come to the microphone, just state your name and address for the record, please.
May I speak?
Yes. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Valerie D'Ambrosio. I live at 734 on the Turnpike for 41 years. Okay, last night a boy was almost killed by a car. Bicycle in between two cars. I have the license plate of the accident, of the swerve and it hit. This is dangerous. This is about life and death. I call and they tell me, are you going to stay in this evening? I didn't know that I had to stay in for the evening once there were patrons. My suggestion is there's no parking on the Turnpike. That's it. When you have a restaurant, you should have adequate parking. It should not be my concern. And when I have company over, my company doesn't even want to park on the Turnpike before this. It's not safe. They're going 40 miles an hour. And then when they try to go around someone else, we have many, many people that come from other towns just to ride their bicycle, to walk their dogs, to run, to jog. It looks like the boardwalk past my house, spring, summer, and fall. This is not a place to have cars. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tina Ike. I live at 2 Lockwood, so I'm probably like the first house in that, off of that U of Dale and Lockwood. So I appreciate the perspective of the business. I bartended all through my 20s, so I get it, and I get those workers needed, and I appreciate what you guys are saying about having to keep them in business. I'm going to speak from a little bit different perspective. The patrons that are coming out of this restaurant, I haven't really seen much of the speeding. I'm not saying it's not happening, but they're really, really drunk. Yeah, and so in the past, I've only lived there for 3 years, but in the past 3 years, I've seen probably a couple dozen piles of vomit, like right at the bottom of my driveway. So they're coming out of there like too intoxicated. And like I said, I bartended for many years. So if you're serving someone to the point where they need to puke before they get in their car, that's another problem. I know that might not be for this outlet right now, but I'm one of the ones who had to call the police last week because a gentleman blocked part of my driveway, which was fine. I have babies. I'm in for the night. But he was laying on his horn, and then there was shortly after the police responded very adequately, might I add, to a domestic violence like that they were having in their car right at the end of my driveway because they were totally drunk, just way too drunk. There's a lot of screaming, there's a lot of honking, but, so I'm kind of like, the parking thing I kind of get, they need somewhere to go, which when they're not blocking my driveway, I actually don't care that much. It's the alcohol, like they're coming out of there just so bad and so dangerous and just, yeah, so I just wanted to speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Alan D'Ambrosio. I live at 734 Turnpike, 5 houses up from the restaurant. The issue isn't the volume of people in the restaurant, it's the parking. People park right up to the edge of literally, their bumper is at the edge of my driveway. And to pull out onto the turnpike, you can't see anything. It's on both sides of the street. The other day, they were parked all the way down by the stables, by Bowers down there at the end. And from the restaurant all the way down, and from the restaurant going back towards Chase Bank and stuff. The customers aren't going to know that they can park in Chase Bank. They don't know that. And they're going to park as close to the restaurant as they can, because they're walking a quarter of a mile to get there. All right? A suggestion, I don't know if it's possible, is there's got to be some sort of ordinance that you have to park a certain distance from a driveway. I know in a lot of towns that's 15 feet. I'm suggesting a yellow curb on either side of everyone's driveway. So instead of having 5 cars parked between the 2 houses, maybe it's only going to be 3. But at least you can see when you're pulling out of your driveway. Literally, the bus coming down the street almost ran into me last night when I was pulling out of the driveway. Because he couldn't see me, and I saw him, but you have to literally edge out into the traffic to see what's coming the other way.
What about tonight, the glass and the BMW?
What is this?
Yeah.
Is there something?
There was...
I don't know. I have to research.
We shouldn't look like that.
There was somebody who got into an accident in the afternoon, because they do park in the afternoon now, in front of our house, and there was glass on the street, and I don't know if it was reported or not, but we found the license plate and stuff there. But it's dangerous to pull out of your driveway, and it's not only us, it's all the houses along the turnpike on both sides. So possibly a yellow curb, no parking within 10 feet of a driveway. At least we'll be able to see when we're trying to pull out, but if we could.
Adam, I'm sorry, Mayor, can I ask a question? Adam, right down the street, there's the church. Did you say that they have an agreement with the church that they can park in there?
Not with the church, no. As a component of their 2018 application, they had to secure an agreement with the body shop next door.
Yeah, but that's not going to get them much. I mean, if they can get an agreement with the church or back to Chase Bank, they might just have to do valet parking, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
And again,
on the no parking though, because that is an issue, because it's not only If we do no parking, that means for Thanksgiving, your family can't park there either.
I'd rather be alive than
That might be good for you, but we have a couple hundred people that live down Turnpike, because it's not just there, it's Turnpike, right? All the way down to Wayne. But then there's also other things like, the dentist down the street. There's, they park, the church sometimes has people park there. So we just have to be very cognizant of how everybody is using it. Now, I totally agree with you guys. I mean, there's things that we're hearing, we drive past, and there are a lot of cars. I don't frequent the restaurant, so I really don't know what's going on inside, but that I'm hearing people are blocking driveways. That is more than annoying. God forbid you had to get out for whatever reason. That's a problem. Speeding is a problem. Throwing up on people's property is definitely a problem. None of those things are acceptable, so we have to figure it out. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
So, thank you guys for hearing us. Sean Irwin, 721 North Compton Turnpike. So I live directly across the street from the restaurant. And my issue is really about people parking in front of my driveway, parking too close to the hydrant in front of my house. That's a big problem. But I'm really all about suggestions or for looking for solutions for this. Is it possible that not only do we stripe the curbs, red for hydrants, yellow for driveways, but can we paint spots, paint specific parking spots on the street, right? So in a spot where you may see 6 or 8 cars parked, say you have a spot where there are 8 cars that could park in that section, paint 6 spots. Make it so my kids can safely cross the street, right? Maybe we add a crosswalk, okay, in that area, on the corner of Prospect, going across the Tavern 5. So for me, it's all about the solutions. And in front of my house, 2 cars should park, not 3. And I frequently ask customers to move out of my driveway, and I get argued with. I had a police officer, an off-duty police officer, he parked in front of my driveway at 8 o'clock at night. I asked him, I said, "Excuse me, can you move your car?" He goes, "What's your problem?" I go, "You're parked in my driveway." "No, I'm not." Well, I said, "Sir, I see you're an off-duty police officer, and you don't understand the law. You're parked in my driveway." And he moved his car, but it's a problem. And I don't begrudge their success at all. And I bought my house long after they were established, so I can't begrudge that either. But we got to find a solution.
Can't park in front of
And it's not a conversation you should have to have.
Right. So, anyway, I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Who would strike that? Would that be the county?
So it is a county road. We would have to engage in dialogue with them about approval for who could do what and whether or not it would be something we could pursue, but it's definitely something that is, the idea of striping has absolutely been brought up and other aspects to it, so that's something we can pursue.
And one side of the street.
We're going to take one person more, and then there'll be more comment at the end. But
Hi, my name's Jackie Lynch. I live at 727 Newark Pompton Turnpike, pretty much diagonal across. And I'm just going to reiterate what everyone else has said. I think the solution of giving some leeway, I got 3 kids, 23 and 2 19-year-olds. There's a car parked directly in front of our driveway across the turnpike every single night from 4 to 10. And it's a matter of, you've pulled out of your driveway when there's a car directly behind you. So it's an inconvenience from about every day from 4 to 10. And now with the Saturdays, it's even earlier. And these don't stop. And the kids come and go. I come and go. I think if we had some sort of concerted regulation, as what Sean was saying, with the curbs and the crosswalks and limiting of the parking amount of places to park. And that's a simple solution, I think, so. And even the valet parking, if Tavern 5 would agree to that would alleviate all that.
Parking on the turnpike, valet parking.
Well, also the other situation is you want to do no parking, and your concern, I can understand, is when that limits everybody else on the street. What if you limited it to just business hours of that tavern? 4 to 9, 4 to 10. And then that way, no parking 4 to 10 on the side streets, or no parking, something, just limiting it. I spoke with a wise man.
No, you can do, and it's not uncommon to have hours. You know, you see that with some frequency in school areas. You know, we have certain hours that you can't park. We can look at that.
But that then becomes an enforcement issue, right? So if we have time A, time B, then now we have to clearly enforce it. Whether it was that parking outside of the street, no parking on the street, it still becomes then an enforcement issue, right?
Well, it does, but that's an enforcement issue that's not that difficult to enforce. You have a specific time, you know.
But if we did it on the turnpike, they're going to go park on the side road.
Well, that would be the...
And then this...
No, I was saying even on the side roads, on all that.
I like the idea of the parking, so that people have parking, and maybe we, do a little more enforcement, and...
Because actually, the road has a 60-minute time limit for parking. The turnpike does. So, I know it's not exactly enforced ever, but it really does have that.
Is that true?
The ordinance is on the books. I don't know if there's signage. The challenge there is, again, what we're hearing about the side streets is you take it off the turnpike and you just push it onto the side street. So the idea is to try to solve... No, and I think everybody agrees with that, and I certainly did at the outset. I think the challenge is what solution could be implemented that might be effective as opposed to simply taking the problem and shifting it.
Right, no, of course.
Because in prior experiences in different municipalities, I've actually done 4 parking ordinances on one street because the unintended consequences became problematic and it had to be done over and over and over to try to get it right, and that's what we want to do.
Again, if you think about the limited time frame, and that would eliminate many of the problems you're talking about. So, but I think we guys came up with some great solutions here, so hopefully you guys can take it under consideration. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we've reached 30 minutes of public comment. As previously noted, an additional period for public comment will be reserved for later on in the meeting. The next item on our agenda is the manager's report. Mr. Brewer?
Thank you, Mayor. Within my written report, there are a number of items I just want to call to the council's attention. This evening, we have for public hearing and potential action the 2021 salary ordinance. As discussed at introduction, it's the legislative act that empowers the municipality's ability to pay people. We also have the ordinance addressing the new state laws regarding cannabis scheduled for public hearing. With respect to the 2021 road resurfacing, always a popular topic this time of year, we have 2 streets being authorized through the Morris County Co-op for milling and paving. They are Colfax Drive and Sherman Avenue. As many may be aware, Alexander Avenue was recently resurfaced with some improvements to curbs and sidewalks. That was done through a Department of Transportation grant, and we're also underway with the improvements for the sidewalks on Ramapo Road. So there's lots of good construction going on throughout the community. Within the council's packet, there's a memorandum from Chief Dan Commune regarding the township's police department policies and procedures, specifically the policy on tattoos. Many departments 10 or 15 years ago revised the policies regarding visible tattoos, and we did not. The chief is currently recommending some consideration of a revision of that policy. Upon review of that, the township attorney and I had a conversation regarding the necessary legislative action, and it was discovered that we have updated our rules and regulations consistent with our police accreditation process, but it's not been done with the council's action. It's been done through the manager's office because of the manager's role and oversight of personnel. So there's an ordinance scheduled for the council's consideration to make that the appropriate process for the revisions of the police department rules and regulations. And then lastly, within my report, Peters Associates, as discussed during the 2021 budget season, there were questions regarding fire department apparatus. Proposal was received from Chief Peters, who has previously done work for the township on fire department apparatus, to do a comprehensive review of the fire department fleet and provide some recommendations regarding priorities for budgeting, what apparatus may or may not be necessary, and how to move forward into the future. Unless there's any questions, that concludes my report.
Any questions from council?
No.
Next on the agenda, public hearing on ordinance number 2021-06. Ms. Marsh?
Ordinance number 2021-06 is an ordinance to amend Chapter 189 zoning, Section 7, supplemental regulations, subsection 40, regulations pertaining to all districts of the Code of the Township of Pequannock, to include a new paragraph M to prohibit cannabis establishments as uses within the township. This hearing was carried from May 11th, 2021.
Mr. Brewer, do you have any comments?
When this was introduced, there was discussion regarding the law that the state recently enacted. In essence, it's the opposite of how land use typically works, in that if something isn't specifically permitted, it is therefore prohibited. Essentially, this law was enacted giving the Township Council a deadline to act, or anything that was allowed would be allowed for a period of 5 years, and then the council could reconsider its position. However, anything that was approved in that time period would result in it being grandfathered. The challenge is there's a completely new world out there, and the recommendation of League of Municipalities, as well as several lawyers, and at the time myself and Mr. Oostdijk, was that the prohibition of all activities now would allow the council to consider anything in the future with the appropriate time to vet it. So the ordinance was introduced accordingly, and the scheduled public hearing was carried to this evening.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the council?
No.
Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
If anyone in the audience has questions or comments on this ordinance, please come to the microphone and identify yourself for the record.
Good evening, Ms. Mayor, council members. Thomas J. Malika Jr. from the law firm Vogel, Chait, Collins, and Schneider in Morristown. I'm here tonight appearing for Hillview Realty, the property owner at 30 Hillview Road in Pequannock, and you know it colloquially as the Grow Right facility, okay?
If you feel comfortable, you can take your mask off while you speak.
Sometimes
Thank you.
it's hard to hear.
Yeah, it's harder than I thought it would be. Thank you very much. I'm going to start by quoting your township manager, who just said with regard to the Tavern 5 property that you can't prohibit something that was already approved. And that's why we're here tonight, okay? And I filed numerous documents with the council and also the planning board setting forth our position. We object to the ordinance as it's currently drafted. I've written revisions to the ordinance, okay, that exempts the Grow Right facility from the prohibition. We'd like the ability to manufacture and cultivate cannabis. We're already manufacturing and cultivating cannabis in the form of hemp. We have licenses from the Department of Agriculture allowing us to do that. We have what is referred to in law as a pre-existing non-conforming use, okay? That's what's going on with the property. That will always continue whether you adopt this ordinance or not. There's no way around that, okay? Section 68 of the land use law recognizes that. What I'm encouraging this council to do is to adopt the ordinance as I've rewritten it, okay? Because then you're converting an otherwise pre-existing non-conforming use to a principally permitted use. And there are serious benefits to doing that. You can then tax the revenue generated from the facility per the recent legislation. That would be a significant tax benefit to the township, over $500,000 a year probably. You want a new municipal building? You want to not have to bond for public improvements? There you go. More importantly, as I indicated, you already approved Vandevried at 30 Hillview Road for this use. I don't see legally how or why you would want to step back in time and try to undo that. And if there are questions about the use and what's actually happening now, again, he's already cultivating and manufacturing hemp, or cannabis in the form of hemp. I have Mr. Vandevried with me here tonight, and he can give you a brief presentation and also answer questions. It's my understanding that you weren't going to vote this evening, so if that is in fact the case, I'd like confirmation. But if you do plan to vote, I'd like to be able to put expert planning testimony into the record. And also, for housekeeping purposes, I do want to confirm that you have all of the documentation that I've submitted. If you don't, I'd like to introduce it now as exhibits.
Okay, so I will confirm that we are not going to vote on it, on the adoption of the ordinance tonight. It is going to be carried again because the council has some additional work to do on it.
Okay.
So we are not intending to have that on for a vote vote tonight. We opened the public hearing basically to hear from you and your client in advance of that, and anyone else from the public who has an interest in it. And the proposal will be to carry the ordinance again. The documents you supplied were put in the council's packet tonight.
Okay, so there's no need for the purpose of the benefit of the record?
Those are already part of our record.
Thank you, counsel. So with that, and I'll give a brief summation after Mr. Vandevriet speaks, but I'd like to introduce you to Kenneth Vandevriet. He's the CEO of Hillview Realty.
Good evening, council. My name is Ken Vandevriet. I'm CEO, founder of Hillview. So, my family's been in this town for over 55 years. My extended family lives over at the Grow Right property. I was born there. My grandfather landed basically where all the greenhouses are from, all those Dutch greenhouses. That's either my grandfather, it's now third generation. So I live in town, I own a house here. My 3 brothers, 2 sisters have houses here. I coach Little League, involved in church. I've been in this town for a long time. My experience in agriculture goes very deep. Our family collectively occupy 26 million square feet across the country. We supply every Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart with any kind of flower bedding plant that you buy for your house, vegetable plants. 11 years we moved into the cannabis space, understanding that the cannabis plant is going to make its way into a controlled environment to grow. I spent basically my last 7 years out in Colorado, Nevada, California, building out cultivation, manufacturing, and dispensing of medical cannabis, which then moved into adult use. So we understand the cannabis plant better than anybody. The cannabis plant is also the hemp plant, and I'll get into that. More recently, in 2019, when President Trump signed the Farm Bill, it allowed hemp products, which is cannabis, but that has 0.3 THC or less, the psychoactive feel, in a hemp plant, legal products across the country. So cannabis is defined as hemp, which contains 0.3 THC or less, that there's medical cannabis that's termed around, that you need a medical card to go get it, and now adult use, which is the new term that we're talking about here with the ordinance. So we applied in 2018 for the state of New Jersey, and we finished top 8 out of 193 applicants. We missed it by 1 point. We applied in 2019 for the medical cannabis license. We are still in this process for about 2 years because of the governor administration can't seem to get this whole processing right. Not only have we that, we have agreements with hospitals. We have patented on extraction of cannabis extraction. We are very deeply involved in the medical benefits of cannabis. Not only that, we are in the final process of 1 of 20 DEA federal licenses that will be able to supply cannabis to pharmaceutical companies. So even though this is a conversation about adult use, it all goes together. We then secured our 2020 hemp permits from the state of New Jersey, which we have, we're now growing our 3rd crop. More recently, we have launched this product, Kalo, which is a hemp-infused seltzer, totally federally legal, that is in 1 short year has been in 3,000 stores and in 8 states. You find it in here in about 10 places here in Pequannock. But when we went for our medical license, the one thing you needed in your application was local zoning approval. So because of our property is very uniquely positioned as an I3 in this zone, a pre-existing agriculture use, there was no need to come in front of the council because it allowed for us to grow cannabis, because cannabis is just an agriculture product, even though it has legal limits on it, but that we have to deal with the state of New Jersey. So we were awarded a zoning permit in 2018, and then also followed up in 2019. So right now we are currently waiting for our medical license, which will then get grandfathered into adult use, so will be grown for medical patients and adult use patients. But what we're proposing here is nothing that has been out of the ordinary of the town zoning, and what's happening is we want to cultivate and manufacture cannabis. We do not want to retail. We will take our product and ship it outside of this facility. So in medical cannabis, the only tax is at the retail. With adult use, basically there is a local, in the law that was just passed, is a local 2% tax that the town council would have to pass an ordinance to allow that to happen, but this is all part of the conversation. Our first phase of cultivating and extraction is going to give the town in excess of $500,000. That's 1/10 of what we can build over the next 5 years as the market allows us to cultivate. We understand cultivation at the highest level. I've built these places all around the country. I've dealt with this in Nevada and California with zoning and understanding how do you build these facilities from a very high-tech standpoint. We have a lot of money involved in this of building this facility at the highest level. Basically, this is a pharmaceutical bill. We are probably going to spend anywhere from $100 to $130 a square foot. This place will be very secure, and no one will even know that what's happening over there. We have been growing, and the town probably doesn't even know it now. As soon as we got our hemp permit, we gave the zoning or our permit to the chief of police. That we are growing this plant. This plant looks the same, feels the same. There has been no issues from smell, from odor, from kids, anything around. No one has even known. So the only difference is the 0.3 THC. It contains more in that. So to Tom's point, you can speak after this, we're suggesting that not only the town council take a look at this, but our property is the only uniquely property that actually is 1,000 feet away from a drug-free school zone as well. So you must have that in order for even to get a state permit. So our property is very uniquely positioned that even if someone want to open up shop here on 2300, you can't do it because you have to be 1,000 feet from a school. So when you take as a crow flies 1,000 feet from a drug-free school zone, it knocks out pretty much almost the whole entire town. And our property is very uniquely positioned. So I would hope you consider this. We are definitely a resource to help. There's a ton of zoning. All the municipalities are going through this same issue of zoning. We're here to help. I would hope you would consider that our existing permit would stand, and then if the town council feels that retail is banned, there is ways to ban a retail and do things like that. And I understand also that this has to be in by August 21st or 22nd, so there is time to actually think about this and let's do this right. So the tax revenue that will be coming out of our property is going to be very significant for this town. And like I said, as being, my family's been here for many years. We love this town. My family, I would love to see the tax revenue go to something good to really help this town out. So thank you.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
You said you were, I forget, number something, and you were almost close to it, but have you gotten any approvals? Has anybody said, yes, you are going to get these approvals that you're needing?
The first phase, we got our hemp licenses.
Right.
So we went through the first phase.
For regular cannabis,
Cannabis, it's been held up in a legal process in the state of New Jersey for 2.5 years. It finally just got released out of that in February, so we're waiting for the awards to happen.
I thought they weren't giving out any more awards for a while.
We've been sitting in this quasi-holding pattern for 2.5 years.
Right. I thought I read that they kind of put a hold on getting that. I could be wrong. I'll have to look it up.
No, we're very close to this issue.
So they did tell you you're close, or you're just waiting?
So this round, there was 193 applicants in 2019. We are down to probably 1 of 15 in the north. That's where we're sitting right now.
Didn't the lawsuit start from people that were told that didn't get it?
That, and also they didn't have local zoning approval. They were in a drug-free school zone. Their application was 100% complete. So that's the reason why they were...
And that's what started the lawsuit 2.5 years?
Yes.
So they could be, because I know you guys had marked up and kind of changed things, but that kind of favors you and leaves everybody else out, and that could cause more problems too. I mean, we have a lot of farms in this town.
Mm-hmm. In regards to what?
when you changed our resolution.
There's ways to, Tom can speak to that.
I think I will speak to that, and you don't like using phrases, especially in law, that someone should be treated differently here, but in this case, he should be treated differently because he does have a pre-existing non-conforming use with a zoning approval. There's nobody else in the town. I don't even know how many other people in the state have that. And frankly, a lot of municipalities would die to be in this situation because you can actually legitimately say to anyone that questioned you, he had a municipal land use law, pre-existing, non-conforming use, and we were constrained to change the ordinance to recognize that. And by doing that, we then converted it to a principally permitted use, and now we can tax and otherwise regulate it. Okay, but as a pre-existing non-conforming use, respectfully, you can't stop it. I don't see, why you'd want to go down this route. It just seems mutually beneficial to acknowledge the revisions that I've written and move forward in that regard. You can't treat them differently.
Yeah, there's just so much we don't know about it, like you said, and I know he had said before, and thank you for speaking, but, you can't smell it, you can't do it. I think our biggest thing was when all this comes up, we just wanted to hit the pause button and say,
correct.
Let's just see what happens, because, the state really wasn't fair to us either, make your decision by August, whatever.
I understand that, but this is a very unique situation, and you heard Ken talk about the millions upon millions of dollars that have been invested in this, relying upon the zoning approval that the township gave him. I mean, come on, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah, but he can't guarantee he's getting those.
He can, because we've already had this discussion with your council and manager. In the event he can't get an award, he'll buy a license on the open market.
Can you talk to me about the 1,000 feet that Ken referenced?
Well, Ken can speak to that a little bit more. That's a requirement that a facility must adhere to, and when Ken and his chief compliance officer looked at the town and the mapping, it's their opinion that no other facility can exist as the town is currently configured and as the properties are currently configured because of their inability to satisfy that buffer requirement. Ken can speak to that more.
So in the New Jersey application where you're awarded a license from the state of New Jersey, there's a section in the beginning that you must comply with the drug-free school zone. That's a law on the New Jersey books, that you must be 1,000 feet from their property. So when I said that before, property line to property line has to be without the drug, or outside the drug-free school zone. So if you took Pequannock, and I actually think we did this exercise in 2018, and you took all the schools, and preschools, elementary schools, everything, and you took all the property lines, and you did circles around that on 1,000 feet, you'll be surprised. There's probably no location in Pequannock that will meet that actually they can apply for the state of New Jersey.
Not any down Farm Road? Not the ones on the end of Farm Road?
There's a school right there. Northern New Farm Christian School.
Yeah,
my whole family.
That's a little farther off. Don't they own that property? They can.
Yeah.
They can own that property if they want to get rid of the school.
Just to get to this level, there's not only, you need local zoning approval, you need drug-free school zone approval, you need 3 things just for the state to even look at an application. So.
But you still have no guarantees.
No guarantee of being awarded a license?
Correct.
No, but we're in 3 LOIs that we would acquire a license because of the time and effort we put into this and the money that we're going to spend to move into the space. So.
In the license, I'll stand to be polite. The license is, we understand the council's concern, and Mr. Brewer has raised that concern in the past too, but we're representing that. We don't consider it to be a big hurdle here. What we're talking about now is a much bigger problem for us, okay? Again, Ken can buy a license if that's what it comes down to.
Okay, thank you.
So 1,000 feet equals roughly 0.2 miles.
Yeah, I would have to look at them.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No, I was going to say, the mayor brought it up before, that the reason we did this, as I'm sure you know, is it was just to hit the pause button, just like the mayor had mentioned. And it was, the recommendation, so we can then, regulate it.
No, the reason we did this is because Governor Murphy put us in this position.
Well, true.
And we have to do this to protect
Right, to
the
protect,
township of
to
Pequannock.
protect the town, yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
I understand that, as does Ken. There's a way to protect yourselves and also protect my client's interests that he's fostered and developed based upon the approval that you gave him, okay? So I think that, again, this is a mutually beneficial situation that we're in here. And I'd ask you, I'm glad to hear that this isn't personally motivated or related. Remember, you're a legislative body. You should not be thinking of the person, but the people. That's who you're legislating for, okay? The people. And I'll just note, for the record, over 60% of your voters in November of 2020 voted yes to the question about whether they supported adult use. So, to me, this is consistent with what the people of your municipality actually want, okay? And I'd urge you to reconsider the ordinance as it's currently drafted. I'm glad that we're going to be able to come back. At that time, I would like to offer expert testimony. And in the interim, I'm hoping you can further review the changes I've suggested. I've also given you Jill's zoning approval from 2018 and some other documentation that I think will be very helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Is there a motion to carry this hearing to the June 8th meeting?
Have somebody
What?
else. Other people.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Come on up.
Should have spoke up. No, it's the masks. I can't hear with these masks.
Politely waiting my turn, man.
Sorry.
Thank you. My name is Michael Hazukov. I'm a former Pequannock resident. I live in West Milford Township right now.
I'm sorry, could you spell your last name?
C-H-A-Z-U-K-O-W.
C-H-A-Z-U-K-O-W?
Yes.
Thank you.
I live in West Milford now, where I'm actually also a councilman, so I hope I can help speak to some of the resources and challenges that you face. But I'm not here actually representing the municipality. I'm here in my capacity as executive director of the New Jersey chapter of NORML, which is the National Organization to Reform Marijuana Laws.
Say that again. What is it? NORML?
NORML, N-O-R-M-L, the National Organization to Reform Marijuana Laws. It is the nation's oldest cannabis policy advocacy group, about 50 years, and we represent cannabis consumers in the country and the world. And while we do not represent industry, sometimes our interests for consumers and industry are aligned. Sometimes they're not, but in this case, I'd just like to say that I very much agree with everything that Ken and his attorney said tonight. As a council person, it's difficult for me to imagine why someone would want to pass a ban. I do understand that you feel rushed. But as the attorney pointed out earlier, 60% of the voters here did vote for it. That's not a nail biter. It was a very solid win, approximately the same numbers as Councilman Cole and Hurd received. So you just eked out
more than that.
You got a couple more votes, but it was close. It was close. Rather than tell you the reasons why you shouldn't ban it, allow me to give you some of the reasons why you should allow it, the benefits that you would get from regulation. They've already spoken about the 2% taxes that municipalities can get from a business, so it's more than the money, right? The money, which can be transformative in amounts, let's not be kidding, but you don't want to make any regulation for money. That's not a good reason. But what that money does is it makes these businesses partners with the municipality, and his family's been here for generations. So when you have a give and take with a business like this, the cannabis businesses are in a unique position. They all really want the approval of the municipality. They want to do the right thing for you. And it's not unusual for businesses to sweeten the pot with any kind of community services or any additional involvement they might have. ShopRite donates to all sorts of things, right? You get the same kind of relationship from the cannabis businesses. These people are trying to be good people. They're trying to get involved in their community. If you're concerned about law enforcement, which I think a lot of people are, there's two things that you can think about there. First of all, cannabis is safer than alcohol, You're not going to have as many DUI incidents as you would from alcohol. However, if you want resources to combat driving under the influence of cannabis, you need to approve cannabis businesses in the municipality, because the state sets aside a portion of their revenue for law enforcement, and you don't get a piece of that pie if you ban cannabis in your town. So if you want funding for law enforcement, you should consider allowing these businesses. In addition, we're talking about regulating cannabis. We're not talking about allowing cannabis or not allowing cannabis, right? Cannabis is in this community. It's in every community in the United States. So if you don't embrace regulation, you're putting these businesses in the shadows, in the bathrooms of your high school, in the parking lots of the supermarket. You don't want it there. You want it in a controlled environment where a licensed distributor is taking identification from people who are there. And while we're going with the alcohol, retail cannabis establishments often do pre-orders, so you're not going to have to deal with long lines, parking problems like you would at one of these bars. A cannabis business is not going to give you that, so I would definitely encourage that. Medical. People often try to separate and compartmentalize medical marijuana use from adult use. But what the new adult use market, in my mind, really does is creates an over-the-counter medication. We've got a lot of seniors in this community. You've got Cedar Crest nearby. Many of the residents there could benefit from using cannabis, but they don't necessarily want to go to a doctor's office, get an examination, have several visits so they can get a relationship with that doctor. I mean, most people are afraid of even going to the doctor post-COVID. So this would just ease the ability for the people who want it here to get it, to make it easier for them. I know every municipality encourages shopping local, so it seems antithetical to say shop local except for in this case. It's an agricultural cash crop, so that's a great amount of money. If there are any issues that you guys see regarding the businesses and the locations, most of those issues can be solved with zoning. You can restrict signage so you don't have big neon signs. You can restrict a retail establishment to highway commercial as opposed to on the boulevard. I mean, if it were me, I would think, a lot of people walking up and down this street, you don't want to change the character of your community. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I imagine. That's what I saw when I lived here. So that's something that you could do too. You could allow just growing. You could allow just retail in certain areas, but the zoning would really do all that. And let's see, getting to the recommendation from the League of Municipalities, I know that they said that if you're not too sure that you could ban it, but they're not. I think it mischaracterizes the League of Municipalities' position to say that they're recommending a ban. They phrased it as if you're really not sure, you can err on the side of caution. But the League of Municipalities is also providing seminars for municipal officials so that they can answer questions about zoning, so that they can discuss some of the challenges that have been brought up in other states and other municipalities regarding this, so that you actually have the resources to put this ordinance forward within the time restrictions that you've been given. Up in West Milford, we've already introduced our ordinance. We have a zoning map with overlays for all the schools and all the parks, so we know what areas they're not allowed in. We allowed it in industrial and commercial areas, but not in residential. That ordinance is on its second reading this coming week. It's not a difficult process. There's a remarkable amount of resources out there. I'm happy to lend any assistance to you in whatever capacity that I can. And I guess I just want to finish with saying, if anybody can't start their business here, come up to my town. You're welcome there.
Typical councilman, I got it.
That's it, I gotta sell my town. No, but for real, I mean, this would benefit you guys quite a bit, and you won't find an expert like Ken Vanderreed. And what he's saying about the land use is really true. I'm dying looking for a place to get a grower in my town. So you are uniquely positioned to have an extreme benefit from this, and I'd urge you not to squander it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
No.
Is there a motion to carry this hearing to the June 8th meeting without further notice?
I'll make that motion to carry ordinance number 2021-06 to the June, whatever day you said.
8th. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Mayor, can I interject? I would respectfully request that it be the second meeting in June, just because my witness is unavailable on June 8th. Is that acceptable?
I'd prefer it be June 8th, but...
Well, I think we need to carry it come to our next meeting, just for procedural purposes. We can talk about whether we carry it again after that.
Okay. Again, I would like, and I think I do have the right to present expert testimony during the course of a public hearings.
We already moved it once, right?
Yeah.
So...
We can move it again.
We may move it again, but let's just keep it.
I have no objection.
And just to be
at
clear
least
on
at this time.
just to be clear on the planner's testimony, just so I understand it, this is not a land use board hearing. So while I appreciate the testimony of the planner, it's not something that will be weighed or necessarily evaluated like it would be before.
I think it would be a benefit to the record,
I
especially
appreciate
because
that.
the
I just wanna
planning
make sure
board has not had the opportunity and will no longer need to review this, but it is a land use ordinance.
I just want to make sure I understand the goal in the planner providing testimony.
Because it's a land use ordinance, and he's a professional land use planner, and you haven't had the planning board even look at this.
Understood.
Thank you.
This time we're good. Okay, so is there a motion to carry this hearing to the June 8th meeting without further notice?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next on the agenda is the public hearing on ordinance number 2021-10. Ms. Marsh.
Ordinance number 2021-10 is an ordinance establishing minimum and maximum salaries and pay rates for designated officials and employees of the Township of Pequannock.
Are there any comments from the council?
No. Talked about it.
Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
If anyone in the audience has questions or comments on this ordinance, please come to the microphone and identify yourself for the record. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there a motion to adopt this ordinance?
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance number 2021-10.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Florence Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Hurd?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mayor Russell?
Yes. Next on the agenda is the introduction of ordinances. Ms. Marsh.
For the council's consideration is ordinance number 2021-11, an ordinance to amend Chapter 5 of the Township of Pequannock regarding administrative control of the police department rules and regulations.
Mr. Brewer, any comments?
As noted during my report, the township manager serves as the appropriate authority over the police department. This would allow the appropriate authority to authorize any changes recommended by the chief of police to the policies and procedures of the township's police department.
Are there any comments from the council?
Bob, is this something that I should abstain from?
I'm recommending that you do.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to introduce this ordinance on first reading?
I'll make a motion to introduce ordinance number 2021-11.
Second?
I'll second it.
Roll call?
Mrs. Florence Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Hurd?
Yes.
Mayor Russell?
Yes. The next agenda item is resolutions. Ms. Marsh.
Beginning with Resolution R 2021-132, confirming the transfer of membership in the Pequannock Township Fire Department. That's for Christopher Nazer. 2021-133, authorizing the cancellation of reserve for Group Health Trust Fund. 2021-134, authorizing the use of Morris County Cooperative Pricing Council for the annual road resurfacing improvement projects in the amount of $330,000. R 2021-135, awarding a contract for the review of the fire apparatus fleet and corresponding recommendations for an apparatus replacement plan to Peters Associates Fire Apparatus Consulting Services Incorporated for the contract amount of $3,500. 2021-136, authorizing tax office refunds, overpayments, or cancellations. 2021-137, authorizing release of designated escrow deposits. And R 2021-138, approving payment of the itemized claims as set forth on the May 20th, 2021 bill list.
Are there any comments on the resolutions from the council?
No?
No. Is there a motion to adopt these resolutions?
I'll make that motion to adopt Resolution 2021-132 through 2021-138.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Florence Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Hurd?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mayor Russell?
Yes. There are no items listed for discussion, and there are no reports or notices. The next item on our agenda is council reports and announcements. Councilwoman Florence Lynch?
I don't have too much, just the flood committee finally met, yay, after so many months of not meeting. And it went well. We have, as you all know, Jim Bonelli is now the OEM coordinator. He came to the meeting just to, kind of, he said he was there to learn and just do some collaboration and with the flood committee. So it went well. I don't know if he's going to be attending every meeting or whether, he just came to that one, but it was nice to see Jim there. Jennifer McCulloch, our flood resilience officer, she gave her monthly report and she also did the presentation that she did here at the last council meeting, so that went well as well. And then there's just a couple of things that the committee is working on, but nothing to report just yet, probably the next meeting. So that was really my only committee that met this month. So that's it.
Thank you. Councilman Hurd?
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't have any other committee meetings between the last meeting and this meeting, but I do have one announcement, and that's about the Pequannock Township First Aid Squad. They received a check for over $11,000, and it was from the Wayne Subaru, because they were, I'm going to make sure I get this right, because of last year being a very challenging and draining year for the EMS and every member of the squad, they do appreciate the donation that was received, and it will be utilized for increasing the training and purchasing equipment. And again, it was because our first aid squad was picked by Wayne Subaru as a donation. So we really do appreciate that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's going to go a long way for them, so that is great. Other than that, Memorial Day is on. We're actually going to have a parade. We're actually going to walk in it. It's going to be great. And I do have one request, whether it's Mayor or Adam. Can we get this pole removed? Because I can't see anybody over there. I'm behind a pole.
That was my seat.
Hello.
Welcome to my world, okay? Now you know.
I mean, that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Cole?
TBSA met in person for the first time since the pandemic started on May 12th. Nothing really to report there. Company 2 met on May 13th in person. Nothing really going on in the fire department there. They are in the process of redoing their meeting room. Everything looks pretty good down there. Memorial Day Parade, as Councilman Hurd said, Monday. Starts at 10 o'clock, if I'm correct, right?
Yes, correct.
Maresca.
Shorts and golf shirts for us, if that's okay, weather permitting.
You're not wearing a suit?
No. I did that my first year. I was dripping wet by the end of the parade.
That's fine.
That's all I have, thank you.
I don't have much myself either. We do have an Eagle Scout on June 12th, 6 p.m. I don't have all the information in front of me right now, but we signed the proclamation, so if anybody would like to join me.
Absolutely.
It is also at Greenview. I'll have more of that later. Environmental is going to meet back in person coming up, so that gets exciting the more we start meeting in person. And that's it. Next on the agenda is public comment. If anyone wishes to address the council, please wait to be recognized to come to the microphone and provide your name and address for the record. I saw yours go.
Good evening. My name is Beth Stana for Prospect Ave, Pumpkin Plains. First off, I am a LGBT family in town, so I appreciate the proclamation of making June Pride Month. We have a long way to go, but we're going in the right direction. So I wanted to say I appreciate that. Secondly, you guys asked for resolutions to the parking because, yes, if we fix the parking of the turnpike, it's just going to push it right down my street. The other night, I did file a complaint with the police department in reference to a vehicle parked right next to mine. I have a one-car driveway, so I have to park my other vehicle right on the street. So making it no street parking, that would affect me, and probably my neighbors where I'd be parking.
Do you have a spot, I'm trying to remember if I know your house, do you have a spot a little off of the street for your additional car?
No, that's where the physical therapy office is, and that's where their employees park. My house is the red house right next to it, so I just park right on the street. The issue that came last week was a pickup truck that came down from the boulevard, so they were facing towards the tavern, and they just, I'm just going to put my front end right there and leave my back end in the street. So it was an oversized pickup truck, and I was curious. I took a tape measure out to the street, and it was 10.5 feet from vehicle to vehicle. I don't know if you guys know, I did Google it.
10.5 feet side to side.
So the width of which vehicles could get through is 10.5 feet. A fire truck is 10 feet 4 inches. That caused such a scary issue for our street. If one of my neighbors had a catastrophe, they would not be able to be helped by the services in this town. So that's just, it's a scary thought for me. The best resolution that would clear off all these is valet. It's just a simple thing. If we could utilize the church, they might get revenue from the tavern to utilize it. They'd have more employees, which would help people in town who need jobs, and they could just valet the cars down to the church parking lot.
Well, yeah, but that would be between them and the church.
Of course it would, and there would be a lot of discussions and other resolutions, but in a perfect world.
You know.
In a perfect world, they would have as much parking as M&T Bank, who does not need it.
Who does not need it.
The other thing would be permit parking. Therefore, I could keep my spot on the street.
That would be tough because we want people from other towns to come to our town. And I mean, as much as I understand, and I'm not belittling the parking or anything, but they did such a beautiful job with that building.
Right.
It really added to the community. And so we want other people to come. We just have to figure out, I don't like hearing that so many people are blocking driveways. But it's definitely something that we can come to something, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have nothing against the establishment. I frequent there quite often. It's a great place with great people and great food. So if we could come up with a great thing that helps everybody, then I'm all for it.
Right.
We will. We just got to figure it out.
I think we can do something. And I also think there was a lot more cars because of the COVID thing. I really believe that the amount of people that weren't carpooling and, instead I'll meet you there. So, that was something to look at.
That's a good question. Have you seen I know it was busy beforehand, like Turnpike, but I really wasn't paying attention to the alt streets.
It was like this last summer.
Yeah.
So regardless of COVID, COVID out of the picture.
My neighbors could speak better of that. I moved in 3 months before COVID hit. So
You only know COVID.
Anybody else here prior of that?
It was always a busy. Yeah, I believe they came.
So even before COVID?
It's a popular place.
No, I know, but that's an interesting point. If more people are driving alone, now they're in compliance with 144 people and the amount of tables and spaces, but now everybody is coming with their own car.
I feel like it got like this when the testing went up in the park.
It's definitely compounded, but it's always been bad.
Yeah, it's something. I'm glad you spoke about it.
I just have one last thing before I step back. Can I get a picture of that Pride Proclamation?
Sure.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Behind the pole. I can't see you. You.
The gentleman wearing the mask.
Yeah.
There you go.
Joseph Scribala, 16 Prospect Ave. I've been a resident of Pequannock for 29 years, and one of the appeals, one of the unbeknownst benefits to buying that house on Prospect Ave was right down the street we had Gilly's Restaurant, which was, on a snowy night, there was nothing better than to walk down with my little girls and my wife and to go to get dinner at Gilly's. Gilly's closed and Tavern 5 took it over, and I'm in the building business, so they did a wonderful job building it up, and it is an asset visibly and business-wise for the town. But I don't think that the success of that business should be at the expense of the safety of the surrounding residents. Right. And that's really what needs to be addressed. Some of the points that were brought up as far as, no parking. You can't selectively enforce parking at this end of town and not do it at the other end of town. I know you can't do that. It's impossible. But I believe that with the success that Tavern 5 has had, should be some responsibility to them to step up to do more also, because the suggestion of the valet, to me, seems to be the best situation. If you say no commercial parking or no parking on the street during certain hours, that doesn't help them at all because they still have to deal with all the cars that they have to park for their businesses. I regularly walk out to the street. I walk my dogs out onto the turnpike. I speak with occasional patrons coming or going to the restaurant. The patrons are coming from out of town. They're not all residents. So it's been successful to that level, but it's also a safety issue. The gentleman that, I believe he owns the Krauser's store, and occasionally I'll buy a lottery ticket there. He wasn't there for a long period of time. When I saw him about 2 winters ago, he said, I was T-boned by somebody pulling out of the parking lot. They just sped out of the parking lot. So it is a safety concern. But I think that we really do need to come up with a better solution than just saying you can't do this or can't do that. We want them to be successful. I'm very happy that they're successful, but don't take away the nice, peaceful street where I bought a house 29 years ago and turn it into a commercial parking lot. That's all that we're asking for.
That's good. We need some dialogue, but thank you. And you're right. You're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have your raised hand?
We got one more over this way, too.
Oh, there was? I couldn't see.
Good evening, Megan Dempsey, 10 Della Avenue. I just wanted to say how much I appreciated the presentation you did earlier for the healthcare workers. This is a very real and very dangerous virus we've been dealing with, and nobody will ever know what those people saw who was not working in a hospital or in those settings. So I really appreciate that they were acknowledged. Congratulations and thank you to all of them, even though they're now home. I also wanted to thank you for the proclamation on Pride Month, which we had brought up at the last meeting, and I just wanted to ask if that will be posted on the town website. It was not part of the agenda, so to Ms. Sana's question, if that could be shared out so that we could all, see it and share it with others, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Go ahead.
Lorraine Mott, 6 Prospect Ave. I just have a question. We were talking about how many seats they have and then how many parking spaces. I think the number was 144 I kept hearing. But does that include, I'm just thinking, it's always been busy once their business opened. It is worse now, and it's not because people are coming in single cars. On my street, there's at least 2 people in a car. It's not that everybody's pulling up singly in a car. That is not it. They are just housing. There's just a lot more people at the restaurant. So even though there's a certain amount of seats, is it ever considered how many people are standing at the bar, standing out on the patio in the back? Is that part of the count?
Well,
you know what I mean?
The bars weren't open, so that was the whole thing. Nobody was standing at the bar.
But I have a feeling now it just seems so incredibly busy. It can't possibly be.
I've eaten in the back and I've eaten inside, and I've never seen anybody standing in the back. I mean,
no, they're not like groups of people because it is later now.
Because they're not allowed. The COVID rules said no.
Even now, so everybody is sitting in a seat when you go there.
Right.
There's not any gathering. Okay, just something I was thinking because it just seems like an incredible amount of cars. I can't imagine where the people are. Who does go in and who would be responsible for the spot inspections of how many people are actually in the tent, in the patio, in the bar, in the restaurant?
The most recent, if I could address that question, the most recent inspection was conducted by a registered environmental health specialist within the health department.
Oh, okay.
They used to be called health inspectors, and then the state made up goofy titles. But that's essentially what they can be considered. That was the person who last did it. I personally went because of the height of the issue and counted the outside seats. The zoning officer would also be involved as an enforcement agent if they exceeded the number of seats. So those would be the two real enforcement agents.
But they have a limit as to how many people can be there, right?
So, again, being the chief bureaucrat, I hate getting back to it. There's a couple different numbers that people need to be aware of. There's the fire code, which is established by how many people can safely egress a room or a building, and that's established by the fire official. When an application comes in for a restaurant, there's an ordinance that requires X amount of spaces based upon Y amount of criteria.
Right.
So it's kind of like two different sets of numbers. What I referred to was, in 2001, the site plan required 51 spaces, and they had 100 seats with 12 bar seats. Okay. So that's what's in their resolution of approval from 2001.
Okay.
And then when they saw it and were given the approval to add 44 seats outside, they had to get 16 more parking spaces. So it's a game of algebra that is a component of the municipal
tent, I think, took up some of their parking.
Correct, and that was associated with the relaxation because they lost their indoor seating because of the restrictions of COVID-19. The resolution was acted upon by the council allowing for outdoor seating to try to recover some of that revenue, which, as we discussed, needs to be revised now that the...
I understand. Now, I appreciate, hopefully we can resolve it because we love our street. It's residential, and we're paying the price for somebody's commercial success. So it's not fair. Thank you, though, for listening to us. Appreciate it.
I can't see if there's anybody.
No, I don't see anybody through that.
I'm trying to... Next on the agenda is a closed session discussion. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R 2021-139, authorizing the Township Council to meet in executive session to discuss potential litigation, contract negotiations with the Route 23 sewer project property owners, and the sale of municipal property?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? At this time, the public portion of the meeting is recessed for the closed session. And thank you, everybody, for coming.